figure out what's going on. They know it's something very suspicious going on, but they can't figure out. They haven't been able to figure out what it is.
Because I'd spoken to this. I'd interviewed Ben Hammersley on this, and he had and like you had said, we're setting up our own system now. I wanted to bring both of you on in on this and just ask you in terms of, this is again something personally I'm concerned about. I don't trust the political system when it comes to the use of information. We have a very poor track record of such information being used for political mileage, like you said, framing people. So would we want such a system here? I mean, firstly, from you, what is the legal safeguards that we need to keep in place if we're creating a system?
I think we have to be very, very clear that unless there are in place adequate safeguards, any kind of a mechanism is likely to be potentially abused and misused to the maximum extent possible. First and foremost, not everybody is a criminal in India, and the need for mass scale monitoring itself does not justify any kind of involvement of national interest. Number two, if the government really wants to do so, it has the ability to come across with the legislation in Parliament. Once Parliament enacts a law, it is procedure established by law, and under that you can legitimately deprive people of their fundamental rights as well. But clearly, there is a lot of legal policy and regulatory issues that have yet to be done. And more so, the question is, from 1947 till 2013, there was never a necessity felt for mass monitoring across India. So what has suddenly now changed the scenario that we should fundamentally change a premise which, if adopted, may impact the vibrant constitution of our own country. Yeah. From a vibrant democracy, we may assume a different color altogether because the constitution never envisages this kind of a phenomenon. So I think there are a large number of challenges, and unless they're not addressed, and come to think of it, the Information Technology Act 2000 does not assist the government in this regard because it only talks about specific instances of monitoring and interception, no large-scale monitoring. So clearly, a lot of homework has to be done.
Yeah. And just a quick follow-up, sorry, I just come back. Okay, sure. Just a quick follow-up, you had mentioned earlier in terms of that we don't have a separate privacy law. Is that something that we definitely need to enact?
I think there's a need for coming up with a distinct legislation on privacy. Much that the reality is that the privacy's expectation has to evaporate, the reality on the ground is that people have an expectation of privacy. And unless you do not give them that expectation of privacy, both in their physical space as also in their data space, there is going to be unrest, there's going to be distrust. Ultimately, they may never work together towards a more fertile or more efficient digital economy and the mobile economy of the world. So I think the privacy law is an absolute necessity. The problem is Article 19 guarantees you privacy against state, but if any private entity violates your privacy, there are no remedies. So the quicker we come up with such a legislation, the better it is.
And what do you think?
See, you can have all these things on privacy, but in fact the privacy legislation has been under discussion in the Ministry of Personnel for the last, I think, 6 or 7 years. But it's strongly being opposed by all the intelligence agencies. Now again, you can have all the laws on paper, but the government violates it all the time because for the last 3 years, every single international phone call or email in and out of India has been monitored and tapped. In India, you have some of these off-the-air tapping systems, which actually spoof the base station of a GSM service provider, so that actually it diverts to itself all the calls which are supposed to go to the base station of the service provider, and then later on passes it on to the service provider. So the service provider doesn't even know that his base station is being spoofed by this off-the-air tapping system, the GSM intercept system. I've seen a lot of these in action. There's something like 20,000 of them in India which have been imported from abroad. And what it does is, on your screen, it shows you like a spreadsheet. Every call coming in, the IMEI number of the handset making the call, receiving the call, the IMSI number of the SIM card number, and I've seen these in action where someone in one of the Delhi hotels was showing me, where every single phone call within the radius of 5 kilometers, this was coming on the screen, and he said, look, you want to listen to any of the conversations? So I said, okay, we listened to a few conversations, and I mean 99.99% of these conversations are, ordinary business transactions or boyfriends talk to girlfriends or something. But if I listen to a conversation of, let's say, a school girl, okay, I had the potential to blackmail her, and I listened in for about an hour to all these various conversations. About 1,000 conversations were coming in. He said, you want to type this number, you want to type that number, and I could easily, blackmail that girl or something, saying okay she's in a relationship or this kind of thing, because everybody has something to hide.
Yeah.
I mean,
more than that, political opponents.
Political opponents are all being tapped. Everyone's being tapped.
That's the thing. So that's
even in
that's completely illegal.
I can tell you this. There was totally illegal tapping of political opponents, and it has been done at the highest levels. For instance, Indira Gandhi as Prime Minister suspected YB Chavan as Home Minister of tapping phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
She actually said that YB Chavan as Home Minister is tapping my phone as Prime Minister. There have been the Home Secretary supposed to sign off on all tapping requests. I know of instances of the Home Secretary's own phones being tapped. When you had the President's phone being tapped, Chandrasekhar as Prime Minister, his phones were tapped.
Imagine.
The Prime Minister's phone being tapped, not just Indira Gandhi, but Chandrasekhar as Prime Minister, phone being tapped. You have had the heads of IB and
No wonder Obama had to lose his BlackBerry when he became president.
No, I mean even the raw chiefs have had their phones tapped by their subordinates. Wow. The subordinates are keeping tabs on what their bosses are doing. So in the intelligence agencies, everyone's tapping everyone else's phone. So when you have all these things going on all the time, you can have all the laws on paper, they're never enforced. The government doesn't follow its own procedures.
The last question that I want to ask you is that India has a very poor record of cybersecurity. And as you had said, 20,000 systems were imported. A lot of this, if we're building this huge system to tap everything, we might not be able to develop it indigenously, we might have to bring it in. Now, Britain is worried that some of the Chinese equipment they've got in will later be used by the Chinese to use their information. If we create this huge system to protect ourselves, it basically, with our poor cybersecurity systems, opens us up to international hacking and giving all our secrets away to everyone.
If they don't already have it.
If they don't already have it. I mean, just counterproductive.
I completely endorse the thought process that a lot of effort has to go in. If you're developing electronic systems and computer networks of such sophistication, clearly you have to map it along with the consequent development in cybersecurity in your own country. It's only yesterday that, or day before yesterday, that the minister has launched the National Cybersecurity Policy. And mind you, these are only policy statements yet. The action plan for cybersecurity in India is yet missing. Yeah. So clearly we are much behind the curve, and the potentiality of such computer networks being misused, abused, hacked, cracked exists definitely and distinctly. So it's going to be a very, very dangerous walk to walk in. We'll have to take all necessary precautions, both security, legal and otherwise, in order to ensure that the data of law-abiding citizens in our country does not get abused or misused, not only within the territorial boundaries of India, but also by powers outside India.
Okay. For the last dozen years, the intelligence agencies have been raising this alarm over the foreign telecom equipment that's come in, especially from two Chinese companies, Huawei and ZTE.
Yeah.
Now Huawei has the largest market share in India. In fact, most of the telecom operators, Huawei is the preferred vendor because they're so low on price and the quality is excellent. But the intelligence agencies for over a dozen years have been raising this bogey that there are trapdoors in their equipment which will relay everything back to China, and it's not just India, they come under suspicion in USA, they come under suspicion in
Britain also has them.
In Britain, yeah. MI5 and MI6 have all talked about Huawei equipment should not be used in their network, and in India Huawei has the largest market share compared to any other vendor.
And I mean, so would it be safe to say that we're basically opening ourselves up to being spied on by everyone?
Well, absolutely. See, the more data you gather, the more data there is to leak. Now, in spite of the very stringent norms, first of all, Manning in Iraq could get so much of information, put it on CDs and pen drives and leak it out to WikiLeaks. You had Snowden also giving out so much of information. What happens is the more data you collect in a database and the more people who have access to it, you also open up more avenues for that information to be leaked and misused. Now, as I said, when I listened to all these phone conversations, none of them had anything to do with the security of the state. They all were boyfriends talking to girlfriends and vice versa. Now, I can go and blackmail any of those girls. Yeah. And say, look, you're in this relationship, I'll tell your parents or else. So that is what the power it puts at the lowest level of the police people, because you're going to have constables listening in. Now, any of them can just go and blackmail the people whose conversations you're listening to, because everybody has something to hide. You know, even if it's not an illegal activity, it could be, it's things you're embarrassed about, relationships, financial transactions, all kinds of things. Everyone has got, you know, a secret that they don't want their family members to know about.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today and, you know, sharing with us all this, all your thoughts on the issue. And basically, we have a very complex path to walk. I mean, they're not only external threats of hacking, but they're internal threats of misuse, and of course, you know, the whole question of civil liberties. So, thank you guys for joining us, and hope to see you next time.